You know, usually when we talk about a daily commute, the absolute biggest fear we have is, like, spilling a cup of coffee on our lap.
Right. Yeah. Or
Like
maybe missing a connection.
exactly. Missing a connection and being, 10 minutes late for a morning meeting.
Yeah. That is basically the baseline of transit anxiety.
Right. But I want you to imagine a completely different scenario for a second. You are on a train. It's a route you take all the time, maybe a high-speed rail line.
You're comfortable. You're reading the book.
Exactly. And the train gets delayed, but not by an hour, not by a day. It gets delayed by exactly 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah. You look at your watch, you sigh, you do the math in your head about how you'll just have to, like, walk a little faster from the station to your office.
Right. It's just a minor inconvenience.
It is. But then the doors open, you step off the train onto the platform, and suddenly your physical body feels like it hasn't slept in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
You are bone tired. You have a raging headache from severe dehydration. And more terrifyingly, you have 3 distinct, vivid days' worth of memories in your head.
3 whole days.
Memories of conversations, of meals, of just, existing in that train carriage for 72 hours. But you look up at the station clock on the platform.
Let me guess. The clock says...
It says only 32 minutes have passed since you first boarded.
I mean, it is the ultimate cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely.
What you are describing is a scenario where a person is violently trapped between what the external universe is telling them is objectively true and what their own biological cellular reality is screaming at them.
Right. It forces a complete, terrifying collapse of how we measure our own existence.
Yeah, because we rely on the continuous linear flow of time to maintain our sanity. When that flow is ruptured, I mean, the mind essentially fractures.
And that absolute fracture of reality is exactly what we are unlocking today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are opening up a leaked investigative dossier, a highly classified case file centered on a single impossible anomaly.
Right. It's known as the Midnight Express, specifically from a file titled bivy.dic.docs.
Yeah, and our mission today is to tear into this bizarre timeline, try to understand the actual physics of the impossibilities that occurred on this train, and figure out the truly terrifying implications of what this anomaly means for the people trapped inside it.
The reason this dossier is so captivating is how it just systematically dismantles our blind reliance on infrastructure. I mean, we trust trains. We trust tunnels, concrete, and schedules. We assume the physical world is static.
Right, we take it completely for granted.
Exactly. But this investigation forces us to question the reliability of our own biological memories. It exposes the hidden, almost predatory depths of everyday infrastructure.
Yeah.
It is a brilliant, deeply unsettling look at what happens when the systems we trust to move us through space are suddenly weaponized to manipulate our movement through time.
It really is. So, to everyone listening, I want you to put yourself right there in the middle of it. Imagine stepping onto the Midnight Express.
Which is billed as the fastest luxury train in Europe.
Yeah. You are expecting a perfectly smooth, heavily catered 30-minute ride underground, completely insulated from the outside world.
Sounds lovely, honestly.
Right. And instead, you step off into an absolute nightmare. The setting for this event is the Gotthard Base Tunnel.
Okay, yes, the Gotthard Base Tunnel.
This is real infrastructure. It's under the Swiss Alps. It's roughly 35 miles long, and it is buried beneath thousands of meters of solid rock.
Swiss precision.
Exactly. The baseline here is Swiss precision. It normally takes exactly 30 minutes to cross this tunnel, but last Tuesday, the Midnight Express entered the tunnel, and it didn't emerge for 32 minutes.
Right.
Now, hold on. I have to stop right here. Because, okay, let's unpack this. If I'm taking public transit anywhere in the world, a 2-minute delay is basically considered arriving early.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a remarkably on-time performance by any standard metric. So why on earth would a measly 2-minute delay trigger an investigation led by a high-level detective?
Yeah, Detective Elias Thorne.
Right. We're talking about Detective Elias Thorne being called in over 120 seconds. Why?
Well, you're entirely right to question that because on the surface, it makes no sense. The delay itself isn't the crime.
Okay.
The delay is merely the symptom. I mean, if you have a perfectly calibrated machine like the Midnight Express, which runs on an automated, closed-loop network where every millisecond is accounted for,
Sure.
a 2-minute deviation is anomalous, sure, but it's not a police matter. A leaf on the track could cause a 2-minute delay.
Right, a minor technical glitch.
Exactly. What triggered the investigation wasn't the station clock. It was the immediate discovery made by the technical crew when they plugged into the train's diagnostic ports at the terminal.
Ah, okay. What did they find?
The train's internal clock, the foundational encrypted digital heartbeat of its operating system, had been set back exactly 72 hours.
Wait, really? 72 hours. Like 3 full days.
3 full days. And this is the chilling juxtaposition we really have to grapple with.
Yeah, because that's insane.
You have a minor 2-minute objective delay in the real world, a blip.
Mhm.
But juxtaposed against that is a massive 72-hour systemic rollback in the train's internal localized systems.
So it's as if the train itself, the physical machine, lived through a long weekend that the rest of the world completely skipped over.
Exactly.
That is baffling. I mean, my first thought if I'm an engineer is, well, okay, the onboard computer crashed, the CMOS battery died, and it reset to a default factory date.
Right, right.
You know, like when your old digital camera would suddenly think it's January 1st, 2005.
Yes, exactly. That is the logical first assumption. You assume a digital glitch.
So why wasn't it a glitch?
Because the diagnostic logs show that the train systems didn't reset to a factory default. They actively processed 72 hours of internal data routing, climate control adjustments, and power cycling.
Wait, they actively processed it?
Yes, all compressed into that 2-minute real-world window. The machine experienced the duration.
Wow.
This points immediately to a localized event that is so profound, it fundamentally altered the mechanical reality of the train.
And that data anomaly is what leads Detective Thorne to physically investigate the carriages.
He had to see it for himself.
Right. So he's walking through this luxury train. Everything's supposed to be opulent, brightly lit, perfectly serviced, plush velvet seats, brass fittings, the works.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hits a carriage that is just dead, dark, silence.
Which stands out immediately.
Yeah, the dossier explicitly notes that Thorne discovers the train is carrying a collective secret that shouldn't exist.
A collective secret.
Imagine the psychology of that moment. You are in an enclosed, high-speed environment moving under a mountain. Finding a dark room in a place designed for extreme visibility implies concealment.
It implies something happened in that carriage that required the lights to be out.
Exactly. Let's expand on that concept of visibility for a second.
Yeah, because a luxury train is fundamentally a space designed for hypervisibility and social performance. You are meant to be seen enjoying the luxury.
Right. You're paying for the experience.
Exactly. So for a space within that heavily curated environment to be plunged into darkness speaks to an intense, sudden intentionality. Someone or some system wanted that carriage unseen.
And Thorne's realization of a collective secret is particularly sinister, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Think about human nature. A secret kept by one person is just a lie. It's fragile.
Sure.
But a secret kept by an entire carriage, an entire group of people within a sealed tube speeding underground, that implies a systemic shared event.
It implies that whatever occurred during that time, distortion wasn't just a glitch in a computer.
Right. It was an experiential anomaly shared by everyone in that space.
Right. But it's a secret that shouldn't exist because, according to the outside world, they were only in that tunnel for an extra 2 minutes.
Exactly the paradox.
You simply cannot develop a collective, life-altering secret with 50 strangers in 120 seconds. It completely defies the logic of human interaction.
It does.
And if this were just a mismatched digital clock, we could still argue it's a software error. But Thorne doesn't just find a dark carriage.
No, he finds physical evidence.
Right. He finds physical evidence on the exterior of the train that proves this was no simple computer glitch.
And the physical state of the train is crucial here. It provides an objective, undeniable anchor to the absurdity. We aren't relying on easily hackable digital clocks anymore. We are looking at environmental impact on heavy machinery.
And the environmental impact is staggering.
It really is.
When the Midnight Express pulls into the station after being deep underground inside a mountain tunnel, the outside of the hull is covered in rime ice.
Right.
Now, the dossier pulls atmospheric data confirming that rime ice of this specific crystalline structure only forms at altitudes above 4,000 meters.
4,000 feet.
We're talking the freezing edge of the stratosphere. Supercooled water droplets, freezing instantly on impact. That does not happen in a geothermally warm rock tunnel.
It's physically impossible under normal atmospheric conditions.
Ah.
I mean, the Gotthard Base Tunnel can actually get quite warm due to the sheer depth and geothermal heat of the rock above it.
Yeah, it's basically an oven down there in parts.
Exactly. Finding stratospheric ice on a train emerging from that tunnel is like finding a deep-sea anglerfish in a desert oasis. It dictates that the train had to be somewhere else.
But it gets crazier because the investigators go for the black box, the digital logs that track the train's location and speed.
And what do they find?
Those are intentionally wiped clean, scrubbed to zero.
Of course they are.
But whoever wiped the digital hard drives completely forgot about the mechanical sensors, specifically the heavy-duty suspension system.
Which highlights a brilliant piece of investigative deduction by Detective Thorne, honestly.
Oh, totally.
When the digital narrative is silenced, you look to the physical, analog memory of the machine. The mechanical suspension logs cannot be remotely hacked or wiped in the same way a digital solid-state drive can.
Because they're just physical things.
Right, they are physical pistons and stress gauges. They simply record physical displacement and kinetic force.
And what those gauges recorded is mind-bending. The suspension recorded a massive vertical displacement.
Yeah.
The train was effectively dropped 5,000 meters while it was inside the underground tunnel.
5,000 meters. Let that sink in.
Now wait, hold on. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let me stop you. Because if a luxury train drops 5,000 meters, it's not a train anymore, it's a pancake.
It's entirely destroyed.
It's like dropping a soda can off a skyscraper. If you drop hundreds of tons of metal down a 5-kilometer shaft, it doesn't just survive, it crumples.
Absolutely.
But the carriages didn't shatter. The dossier uses this very specific word. It says the train carriages were synchronized. What does that actually mean physically? How do you synchronize metal to not crush under its own terminal velocity?
Well, to understand synchronization, we have to move away from the idea of the train physically falling down a hole in the earth and look at the actual mechanics of the anomaly Thorne uncovers.
Okay, I'm with you.
He finds a series of localized electromagnetic emitters hidden deep within the train's chassis.
Emitters.
Yes, these emitters were engineered to interact directly with the environment. Specifically, they utilized the tunnel's massive natural magnetic shielding, the sheer density of the alpine granite and gneiss rock around them, to create a localized time dilation field.
Okay, wait, so they are using the mountain itself as an amplifier.
Precisely. They're using the mountain as a Faraday cage and an amplifier.
Wow.
General relativity tells us that massive objects in intense gravity warp spacetime. These emitters essentially generated a localized artificial gravity well.
Oh.
So the train didn't physically drop 5,000 meters down a shaft. Instead, the space and time around the train were manipulated.
So the suspension system felt the physical force. It felt the gravitational shear of a 5,000-meter drop because the space around it was being violently warped to simulate that displacement.
Right.
But the physical tunnel itself, the rock walls around them, remained completely intact.
Yes. Think of synchronization like being inside a descending elevator in complete freefall. But the localized gravity inside the elevator car itself is somehow perfectly negated.
That's a great way to picture it.
The box is falling at terrifying speeds relative to the outside world, but inside the box, the structural tension is perfectly balanced. The environment is isolated.
So the emitters protected it.
The synchronization emitters ensured that the quantum coherence of the metal, the glass, and the chassis remained intact, while the spatial reality around them was aggressively, violently distorted.
That is an incredible, terrifying image. A bullet train zooming through a dark rock tunnel. But for some localized bubble of space right around the metal hull, it's plummeting through the freezing edge of the upper atmosphere. The emitters effectively folded the physical location of the train into a high-altitude environment for a prolonged period, allowing that stratospheric rime ice to form on the hull, all while the train was geographically still inside the mountain.
The sheer engineering audacity is breathtaking when you really consider it.
Seriously.
They weaponized the natural magnetic shielding of the Earth to camouflage a reality-breaking event. They hid a temporal anomaly inside a geological feature.
But this brings up a massive problem. The machine survives. It's engineered with these emitters to handle the temporal shear.
Right.
But flesh and bone cannot be synchronized the same way a steel chassis can. You can't put a localized gravity well on a human kidney.
And that is exactly where the narrative pivots from a physics anomaly into acute psychological and biological horror.
It gets so dark here.
The machine is built for endurance and isolated coherence.
Yeah.
But the human body is an absolute slave to linear time. Our biology is a ticking clock.
So let's look at the human toll, because this is where it really gets incredibly dark. The source tells us that the passengers in the first 3 carriages experienced exactly 3 days passing, not 2 minutes. 3 days.
72 hours of biological decay.
And Thorne has the physical evidence to back this up. When these passengers emerged onto the platform, the men had 3 days' worth of dense stubble. They were all suffering from severe dehydration and early-stage renal distress, which makes perfect sense. I mean, if your cells haven't had water for 72 hours, your body starts shutting down.
It does.
But the most unsettling part isn't the dehydration, it's their memories.
The biological reality is undeniable, but the cognitive reality is where the true violation occurs.
Every single passenger in those first 3 carriages perfectly remembers sharing a lavish, multi-course meal in the dining car.
A shared memory.
Yeah, they can describe the food, they can describe the taste of the wine, they remember the conversations they had with the strangers sitting across from them.
Which is impossible.
Right, because according to the train staff, the conductors, the chefs, that meal was never served. The dining car was closed.
Completely shut down.
Furthermore, these passengers are acting entirely traumatized. They are disoriented, in deep shock, exhibiting the exact psychological profile of kidnapping survivors.
And yet they never moved.
Exactly. The objective reality of the train shows they were sitting in their exact same forward-facing seats for the entire transit.
We have to unpack the profound horror of this dichotomy.
Please do.
On one side of the ledger, you have objective, external reality. The train staff remembers absolutely nothing unusual.
Nothing at all.
To the staff, the train ride took the standard 30 minutes, plus a minor 2-minute delay at the exit. To them, the passengers boarded, sat down, stared out the window, and 30 minutes later suddenly looked like they'd been stranded in a desert for a long weekend.
It's insane. I mean, it's like taking a 30-minute nap on your couch, but waking up starving with a beard and firmly, deeply believing you just went on a 3-day group vacation to the mountains with people you've never met.
Yeah, it completely breaks the brain.
It really does.
It shatters the foundational trust we have in our own continuity of consciousness. But notice the specificity here. Why only the first 3 carriages?
Right, the staff were completely unaffected.
This suggests the time dilation field generated by the emitters was highly targeted. It wasn't the whole train. It was a confined, weaponized bubble of distorted time placed specifically over those 3 cars.
Wow.
The universe is telling these people 30 minutes have passed. Their cells, their kidneys, their hair follicles are saying 3 days.
But explain the meal to me. Because if they never physically got up and walked to the dining car, if they were frozen in their seats while time accelerated around them, how do 50 different human beings all remember eating the exact same duck confit?
It's a great question.
How do they all remember the same conversation?
That points to something far more invasive than just bending time. It points to a shared, implanted memory.
Implanted memory.
If you possess the technology to manipulate space and time to this degree, manipulating the neurochemical pathways of human consciousness seems like a necessary, albeit horrific, parallel technology.
Like they go hand in hand.
Exactly. Think about the sheer shock to the human nervous system of experiencing 3 days of stationary, paralyzed existence.
You would just go crazy.
The brain would snap. The conscious mind needs a narrative buffer. It needs a placeholder to explain the passage of time.
So, wait, you're saying the meal in the dining car is like a screensaver?
That is an excellent analogy, yes.
As a screensaver.
While the passengers' bodies were subjected to the 72-hour temporal gap, their minds were networked into a shared hallucination, a graphical user interface of a dining car meal to keep their consciousness occupied and docile.
Oh my gosh.
It's a systemic manipulation of the mind to cover up the trauma being inflicted on the body.
I want you, the listener, to really sit with that for a second. Think about your own memories. Think about what you had for breakfast today.
You trust that memory.
Right. You rely on that memory to ground you in reality. If your body physically ached, if you were dying of thirst, if you had a vivid, textured memory of eating a meal with a stranger, but the clock on the wall, the sun in the sky, and every single person outside your room told you only 30 minutes had passed, what do? Do you trust your mind or do you trust the clock?
I mean, most people would immediately assume they had suffered a severe psychotic break.
Absolutely.
The isolation of that experience is a prison in itself. You were trapped in a biological reality that the rest of the world vehemently denies. You become a ghost in your own timeline.
It's gaslighting on a cosmic physiological scale.
Yes.
So let's look at the board. We have a targeted time dilation field causing a 5,000-meter physical drop and a 72-hour biological aging process.
Right.
We have the how hidden electromagnetic emitters weaponizing the magnetic shielding of the Gothard Base Tunnel.
Yes.
But the biggest, most terrifying piece of the puzzle is the why.
Always the why.
Who possesses this kind of godlike reality-bending technology? And more importantly, why use it on a public commuter train? It makes no sense.
On the surface, no.
If you can bend time, why not use it to win wars or corner the stock market? Why torture 50 random passengers in the first 3 carriages?
To answer the why, we have to follow Detective Thorne's investigation away from the physics of the train and into the dark corporate history behind its ownership.
Okay, let's dive into that.
The mechanics of the anomaly, the emitters, the time field, these are merely tools. The true horror lies in the ruthless efficiency of the intent behind their use.
Exactly. And that brings Thorne to dig into a shell company. He discovers that this gleaming, ultra-modern luxury train is actually owned by a defunct, supposedly bankrupt logistics firm.
Right.
And this firm was heavily implicated in a massive sweeping scandal back in the 1980s known as Project Chronos.
Project Chronos. The historical context of Project Chronos is vital to understanding the modern anomaly. In the 1980s, high-level logistics firms were primarily concerned with moving physical goods across international borders efficiently and often without regulatory scrutiny.
Smuggling, essentially.
Yes, very sophisticated smuggling.
Right. But Project Chronos wasn't smuggling cocaine in false bottoms of suitcases. Their original goal was wild.
Unbelievable ambition.
They were testing if high-value assets, weapons, gold, classified tech could be transported across international borders without ever being tracked by time-stamped customs checkpoints.
Think about the value of that.
If you can make a cargo train literally disappear from the timeline for a few days while it crosses a border, you can bypass any sovereign checkpoint in the world.
It's the perfect crime.
But here's the massive twist Thorne uncovers in the modern dossier. They aren't transporting things through time anymore.
No, they've evolved.
They are hiding things in the 3-day gap created between the tunnel's entrance and exit. And those passengers,
The ones in the first 3 cars.
the ones with the stubble and the implanted memories, they are not commuters at all. They are unwitting human storage units for experimental data.
This is the moment the narrative shifts from theoretical science fiction to a chilling, brutally logical commentary on corporate exploitation.
But hold on, let me push back on this heavily.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I'm trying to wrap my head around the logistics of this. So what does this all mean? If I'm a shadow corporation and I want to hide corporate secrets or deeply illegal experimental data, I use a quantum encrypted hard drive.
Right, sure.
I build a hidden server farm in a bunker under the ocean. I don't know, I put it on a thumb drive and bury it in the Mojave Desert.
All standard methods, yeah.
Why on earth would anyone use random human beings on a luxury train as storage units? It seems incredibly complicated, highly volatile, and prone to massive failure. People talk, people get sick, human brains are messy. Why humans?
It seems wildly inefficient until you analyze the genius of the perfect cover and the evolution of their methodology.
Okay, sell me on it.
Hiding behind the opulence of a public luxury train provides immediate, unquestionable immunity from suspicion. No regulatory body looks at a first-class dining car serving champagne and suspects a black site data storage facility.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But more importantly, let's consider the nature of a 3-day temporal blind spot at an international border. That temporal gap is the ultimate secure server room.
The ultimate secure server room.
Think about it. It is a room that literally does not exist in the normal linear flow of time. It cannot be physically raided by police because it's not there.
Whoa.
It cannot be hacked by an outside server because for those 72 hours, the server is outside of time itself.
Wow. Okay, so it's an unhackable vault. If the police try to raid the train at the station, the data isn't there yet.
Exactly.
If they try to raid it in the tunnel, they just see a train passing through in 30 minutes. The 72-hour window where the data is actually accessible only exists in a pocket dimension that the police can't reach.
Precisely. But to address your very valid point, why human brains and not silicon hard drives?
Yeah. Why the messiness of humans?
If we look at the evolution of data storage, we are constantly looking for higher density. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons with trillions of synaptic connections.
Right.
The neuroplasticity of the human mind makes it the most dense, complex information storage mechanism in the known universe.
So it's about capacity.
It's about infinite capacity. In the 80s, Project Chronos was about avoiding customs for physical, metallic assets. Now, they have transitioned to data.
But what kind of data?
What kind of experimental data is so volatile, so massively complex, or so deeply illegal that it cannot be stored on binary silicon?
It's a terrifying question.
It requires the neural network of human consciousness suspended inside a time fold to process or store it. They are using the biological architecture of the human brain as a living, breathing hard drive.
That makes my blood run completely cold.
As it should.
Because if you think back to the implanted memory, the shared meal in the dining car, what if that wasn't just a screensaver to keep them docile?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
What if the act of processing that shared, complex hallucination is exactly how the data is being stored and encrypted?
That is a staggering thought.
They are rendering binary data into a subjective human experience. The taste of the wine, the color of the tablecloth, the words spoken by the stranger. All of it is encrypted code being distributed across 50 human brains at once.
That is a highly astute and profoundly disturbing deduction. The human rights violation here is absolute, but the technical elegance is terrifying.
It really is.
They have commodified not just the passenger's time, but their very consciousness. The passengers are living data silos, entirely unaware that their minds are being used to warehouse secrets that shouldn't exist.
They're just treating them like objects.
It is the ultimate reduction of human life to mere logistical infrastructure. They aren't people to this corporation. They are blank biological floppy disks.
The abstract horror of human storage is terrifying just to talk about from a theoretical standpoint. But it didn't stay abstract for Detective Thorne.
No, he found proof.
The dossier details how he actually found physical, undeniable proof of this biological data transfer on a single, unsuspecting victim.
Which changes everything.
And this brings us to the climax of the investigation, the ticking clock of our story, Passenger 4B, and Thorne's final ride.
Physical evidence is always the anchor that brings the high-concept, theoretical horror crashing painfully back down into human reality.
In the course of reviewing the security footage and interviewing the passengers, Thorne focuses on a quiet, unassuming man sitting in seat 4B.
Just a normal guy on his commute?
During a medical examination, this man is discovered with a highly complex series of coordinates tattooed deeply into the skin of his inner arm.
A physical manifestation of the data transfer bleeding over from the cognitive to the physiological.
Yes, but here's the catch. The man has absolutely no memory of getting the tattoo.
Not at all.
He didn't walk into a parlor. There is no healing process, no scabbing. In fact, he tells Thorne that he believes the train itself wrote them on him while he slept during that transit.
The train wrote them on him.
And when Thorne takes those tattooed coordinates and runs them through the Transit Authority database, the stakes of the entire case suddenly go through the roof.
They match the schedule.
The coordinates perfectly match the exact geographic locations and to the second timestamps of the next 3 tunnel transits for the Midnight Express.
So the data they are storing isn't static history. It's predictive, or perhaps entirely prescriptive.
Meaning what?
It is the operating schedule for the temporal anomaly itself.
This is the ultimate non-consensual download. You fall asleep on a train and you wake up as a walking, tattooed flash drive for a temporal anomaly.
It's horrific.
The infrastructure physically altered his flesh to carry the schedule of its next crimes. But wait, the train wrote them on him. How does a train give a guy a tattoo?
We can only speculate.
Are we talking about microscopic lasers in the seat backs, nanotech in the air vents? Like, what does that mean?
The dossier leaves the exact mechanism ambiguous, which honestly only heightens the terror.
Yeah, the unknown is always worse.
What stands out to me is that chilling phrasing from the victim. The train wrote them on him. It removes the human element of the perpetrator entirely.
It's just the machine.
It suggests a level of mechanization and automation to this biological data transfer that is deeply unsettling. It's not a mad scientist with a needle in a hitting lab. It is the infrastructure itself acting upon the human body.
Wow.
The machine is branding its cargo to ensure the loop continues.
And the cargo carries the schedule. The coordinates match the next 3 transits, which gives Thorne a terrifying ultimatum.
A ticking clock.
Because he now knows exactly when and where the anomaly will happen next. The source document lays out the stakes very clearly.
They couldn't be higher.
If Detective Thorne does not physically catch the Midnight Express tonight, if he doesn't board the train and somehow intercept this cycle from the inside, the timeline will correct itself.
Let's delve into what timeline correction means in this context.
Please do, because that sounds intense.
The universe, much like a computer's operating system, seeks equilibrium. When an anomaly is introduced, like a 72-hour pocket dimension hidden in a 30-minute tunnel ride, it creates friction in the fabric of space-time.
So if Thorne doesn't stop it, the system reboots.
Worse, If Thorne doesn't anchor the reality of the event by interfering, the localized temporal anomalies will collapse under their own paradox.
Oh, no.
The memory of what happened in that tunnel will be entirely wiped from localized existence.
And the consequence of that wipe, the file says it explicitly, the affected people, the 50 passengers in the first 3 carriages, will simply vanish.
They'll be gone.
They will be unspooled from reality as if they never boarded the train, never bought a ticket, never existed.
Never existed at all.
And the file ends on a massive, agonizing cliffhanger. The final line of the dossier simply describes the sound of the Midnight Express pulling into the station, hissing its brakes, ready for its next run.
This elevates the narrative from a mere criminal investigation to an existential crisis of staggering proportions.
It's not just about a crime anymore.
Exactly. Thorne isn't just solving a corporate crime anymore. He is trying to forcefully anchor reality itself.
Yeah.
If the timeline corrects and the memory of the event is wiped, reality is essentially treating the time dilation gap as a corrupted file.
And what does a ruthless operating system do with a corrupted file?
It deletes it. It formats the drive.
Wow.
The passengers aren't just murdered in a traditional sense, they are unmade. Their existence is retroactively revoked to protect the integrity of the corporate data hiding in the temporal blind spot.
It's the ultimate corporate cover-up. You don't just hire fixers to bury the witnesses. You literally edit the universe so they never existed to be witnesses in the first place.
No body, no crime, no memory.
I want to bring these stakes right to the listener's doorstep. Imagine you are standing on that brightly lit platform with Detective Thorne. You hear the train approaching.
The brakes are hissing.
You know for an absolute fact that boarding that train is the only way to save 50 strangers from being cleanly erased from reality.
50 innocent lives.
But you also know that stepping through those sliding glass doors means willingly stepping into a 72-hour biological nightmare.
You're sacrificing yourself.
It means entering a localized time distortion where your mind might be hijacked, your memories overwritten, your consciousness used to store illegal corporate data, and your body aged 3 days and 30 minutes.
It's terrifying.
If you knew boarding a train was the only way to save those strangers from being erased, but it meant stepping into that distortion, would you buy a ticket? Could you force yourself to step onto a machine you know is explicitly designed to break your perception of reality?
It is a question of profound moral courage weighed against the deepest, most primal instinct for self-preservation.
Truly.
By stepping on the train, Thorne is willingly becoming a part of the corrupted file in order to save it from deletion. He is sacrificing his own timeline to anchor theirs.
And that impending train ride leaves us right there, standing on the platform with him, listening to the brakes squeal, forcing us to reckon with everything we've just unpacked today.
Yes, well, it forces us to look closely at the massive, opaque systems we trust to carry us through our lives and wonder what they are truly capable of when no one is looking.
Let's quickly recap this terrifying journey we've been on. We started with what seemed like a harmless, everyday occurrence, a 2-minute delay on the Midnight Express.
A simple commuter annoyance.
But we discovered that this tiny blip was masking a 72-hour biological and temporal nightmare.
Hidden right in plain sight.
We explored the impossible physics of the event, breaking down how electromagnetic emitters weaponized the Gothard Base Tunnel's natural shielding to create a localized gravity well.
Right, resulting in stratospheric rime ice and a simulated 5,000-meter drop.
We uncovered the dark 1980s history of Project Chronos, revealing how a defunct logistics firm pivoted from smuggling gold to smuggling time itself.
The evolution of corporate greed.
And finally, we confronted the horrific dystopian reality of using human beings, like the man in seat 4B, as living, tattooed data silos.
All leading to a desperate last-minute race to stop reality from deleting 50 innocent people, like corrupted code.
Exactly. It's just a lot to process.
We have dissected the mechanics of the impossible today and found a very human, very recognizable corporate greed at its core.
For sure.
But I want to leave you with a final, perhaps far more unsettling thought to ponder as you go about your week.
Oh boy. Lay it on us.
We all experience moments of lost time in our daily lives. You zone out on a long drive and suddenly realize you've missed your exit, with no memory of the last 5 miles.
Yeah, that happens all the time. Highway hypnosis, they call it.
Exactly. You lose a few minutes staring blankly out the window on your morning commute. You misplace an hour scrolling on your phone in a waiting room, completely detached from the clock on a wall.
Right.
Based on what we've learned from the terrifying logic of Project Chronos, if a gap in time can be artificially manufactured to hide massive secrets, what else might be slipping through the unseen missing minutes of your daily routine? When your mind wanders and the clock jumps forward, what if your lost time isn't actually lost at all, but is currently being occupied, utilized, and stored by something else?
Wow. That is a terrifying thought to take with you on your next commute.
Isn't it just?
Thank you for joining us on this complex, mind-bending journey into the Midnight Express. As the theoretical train pulls out of the station, we'll leave that question lingering in the air. Keep questioning the timeline, trust your memory, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.